Today, a little bit different. So normally it's myself, it's Sheena, and it's also a client or somebody who's going to talk about a topic that they're an expert in. Well, today we're the experts because we're talking about recruitment. We are talking in particular about trends that we have seen, I guess, over the past 12 months, problems that candidates face, problems that our clients face. And we thought, you know what, let's just put it all into one podcast so that we can answer all the questions that you normally will have and we can share our advice and give our tips. So I'm a bit worried about this actually, because normally when it's me and Sheena talking together, it's us having a glass of wine, and I'm a bit scared.
We don't have one.
We don't have one.
Just honestly, I genuinely could do with a wine today.
It's been a day. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to split this into two sections. We're going to do a section that's based around candidate problems, issues, and then a section around client problems, issues, hiring managers.
Yeah.
So, Sheens, you're going to lead us on the candidate side. You're better on this side anyway, but you're going to lead us on. Yeah. Go for it.
I will probably have a few rants today. just in advance, Jules.
No.
Just a note, it's going to be a very informative episode, isn't it? Because we have a lot to say, if we haven't said that before. So I'm going to kickstart with the candidate side. Yeah.
Cool.
First question is gaps in employment. I have candidates ask when I am representing them at interview, what do I say about my gaps in employment? And there are situations people have come across. There are unforeseen circumstances. How do they explain that? And sometimes they just don't know what to say, how to say it. And if they do have a few, it sort of becomes a trend. And sometimes hiring managers have felt not sure, not reassured.
Yeah.
So I'm kickstarting it with that question. How would you advise a candidate to answer that question in interview or explain their gaps in employment if they have any?
Yeah, I mean, this happened obviously a lot after COVID, and I think everybody in the world is a little bit more, actually a lot more empathetic to the fact that people are made redundant. People do find themselves in situations where they don't have a job for a certain period of time. Yeah. So my actual answer is more sort of led towards the hiring manager. Be empathetic to what a person has gone through, because it's life, right? We all have personal situations. We all have career situations, business situations. It's not easy. And I think sometimes just showing a bit of empathy is really important. From a candidate perspective, just be honest. Try and get them on your side, really, because it normally is down to something that's just a personal complication or an economic complication. So that's my answer to that one.
Yeah, very, very straight, isn't it? Very, very straightforward, that from our perspective.
Yeah.
I think for me, the honesty bit really hit home, because there are candidates who aren't honest, about that, because it might be a confidence thing. They might have been out of work for a little while, or whatever that gap is. And sometimes it's just honesty is the best policy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just be very candid about it. Just be very transparent. And that's the advice I would give to a candidate there.
Cool. What's next?
Yeah. Next question that I face.
Today.
Absolutely, we are. We are going to be very straightforward, which I think we are day to day anyway, to be fair. So it will probably be even more so today. Next question from a candidate is, what questions to ask at the end of an interview? Now, I said to you, I'm going to have a rant today. I am. Candidates sometimes do not ask anything. So I'm going to go straight in with, Jules, ask something. Something is better than nothing, right?
Oh, you say that though, but I've also had situations where the question that a candidate's asked has been so bad that I'd almost have been like, just don't say anything.
Can you give me an example? Are you allowed to say?
There's so many.
Not naming names.
Just don't ask the really logistical question. The point of that part of the interview, right, is to see how inquisitive a person is, or to see how interested they are in an opportunity or the company. We're judging that question. When I've had somebody interview with me for our business, I'm really judging what they ask me. Yeah. If they ask me what time our lunch break is, not going to go down very well. You're not allowed to eat.
You're not getting a break.
I'm joking. But I think the point is to ask a more thought-provoking question. So the question that I always like, and every single auditor is going to take this now, is how is audit perceived in your business? It's thought-provoking.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Just don't ask something that's really like, what do we wear?
Basic.
Yeah.
Basic.
Yeah.
This is my problem when people are given the chance. I structure the interview beginning, middle, and end, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got the last part to really leave someone with the impression. Stop asking basic questions. Ask things that are outside the box. Ask things that are going to help you stand out from the rest of the people that they are interviewing.
Yes.
Ask them questions like audit plan for the year, their vision for the department, growth plans, strategy plans, a question that's really good. And I think every candidate, hopefully, Jules, we might have candidates that will just go to interviews now and ask all these questions. But, what challenges would you see me face if I was the successful candidate?
Yeah.
For this role? And I state the word if, because if you miss that word out, it will sound too presumptuous.
Yeah.
So don't assume, because it can sound a bit too confident, and that's not a good thing either. So, ask, you're right, thought-provoking questions that help you differ from the next person they're going to see.
Agreed. I love that one there. We get asked that all the time.
I once had a candidate who did say, and sometimes I get it, right? You might not have something to ask. Yeah, which I get. But it just, you have to think about this you have to plan, don't you?
Yeah, and don't be afraid of asking the same question twice to different interviewers, because they don't log down normally what questions people have asked. And actually, you're looking for different perceptions. So one person in the business perception is different to another's. So don't be afraid to double up your questions. Again, it's better having a question than not having a question at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Next one. For candidates again. Why do you want to leave your current company versus why do you want to join us? Tell me more, Jules. How would you answer those? And they are two questions there, and they're two very different questions.
Yeah, they are different. I think that is the point, isn't it? That they are different questions. So we talk about push and pull factors.
I love this when you do this, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't do this often enough. I don't talk about this push and pull factor enough. I hear you do it.
Yeah,
so
it's really important. We've all got a push factor of why we're looking to leave a company, and we've all got a pull factor of why we want to join a company, and they are such different things. So when a client's asking you to talk through your reasons for leaving, that's the opportunity to talk through what your push factor is. Being really great. Be grateful for the experience that you've had. So my biggest tip with this is don't start being really negative about everything. Find the positives, emphasize the positives, and then give the reason. I mean, I think sometimes... So my personal belief is that we should be able to be honest about why we're looking to leave an organisation. And I think unless you go on a rant about hating your boss, I think you can always find a diplomatic way of saying that and diplomatic way of answering that question, because I think it's also important that the future hiring manager is aware of what they don't like about potentially that relationship.
Yeah.
So I think this is where interviewing can become a bit staged. And I actually think being honest is really important, and I would appreciate honesty. Pull factor, do your research in the business and find your pull factor. What is really exciting? What are you looking at on the website and going, ooh?
Yeah. I think that's a really good thing to talk about, and it hopefully candidates can come away from this with thinking about their push and pull factors, right? One thing I will say is no one likes a neggy Nelly. Everyone loves a posy Polly. Everyone loves her, but no one wants a neggy Nelly, do they, Jules?
No, they don't. And I think it can often come out in an interview a little bit too strong.
Yeah. I think one thing that I will say about this particular question from my perspective is that please note they are two different questions here. Candidates get it really mixed up. I've spoken to candidates where I've tested a few candidates and I've just sort of took them through a trial run, especially if they are nervous. And, we do provide that added value service, don't we, Jules? So, sometimes when they've talked about why they want to leave that company, they've talked about why they want to join that new one, and you're getting the two things mixed up here. So really, really, first and foremost, understand and just really think about, what am I being asked here? Because if you start answering the other one, the client is hearing completely the wrong answer to the wrong question, and then you've not answered the question properly, have you?
Yeah. And on that point, when you're thinking about reasons for joining an organisation, this is the opportunity to really show that you've done your research, and this is the opportunity to talk about, you flatter them almost, be strategic. You want to flatter the organisation that you're joining.
Yeah.
Again, I've had a few candidates go into an interview and be no'd because they've potentially picked the wrong reason. So, for example, hybrid working, we know that it can be a touchy topic in an interview, and your reason for joining a business, I personally wouldn't advise talking about the hybrid working being a reason for joining.
Yeah.
It is a sensitive one. You're risking it massively.
Yeah.
It could be a real benefit and selling point, but pick it wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst we're on that note about when you're interviewing and why you want to work for that business, I heard something today. So I just got out of someone I was seeing today, and it's a personal contact of mine, and that person went for an interview, and they were at that assessment centre, a young person, and he actually said, when he was asked, why do you want to work here? And he named, he talked about all his reasons why. But this goes back to what Antoinette Dale Henderson says about gravitas. Yeah. And he was just being himself. And he said, I can see you've got 3,600 employees, but in the near future, hopefully it's 3,601. And I love that, because that goes with the person's personality. And shout out, because that is what would make me, you need to be authentic, you need to be natural. And I think, have your reasons about why you want to work for that business, and really make them strong, and, be different.
Did they wink as well?
Yeah, it was quite funny. It's very suited.
But the thing is,
but it's cheeky chappy, and I love that.
But the thing is, you say that, I would not take kindly if any person in an interview winked at me.
But this is where it goes back to how you interact with that person, how your interviews go. It's reading the room, isn't it, Jules? Because someone like me, we are different. We come from very different backgrounds, and we see one situation that we could both be in as very different perceptions. And for someone like me, I would be like, do you know what? I like that. Yeah. It's a bit pushy, and I like that. That's great. Be aspirational. Yeah. So I think when you have your strong reasons as to why you want to work for that business, and be different. Be different. Stand out from the crowd, right?
Yeah, I love that. And that's a really good piece of advice. Absolutely.
That's a hard one to answer. Next question, which I know you love. I know you love this one.
I feel on the spot. I can't remember these questions.
We planned them a lot. We planned them last week, right? And last week is a long time ago. I mean, this morning was a long time ago for us, right?
I've got no idea what's coming up. Go for it.
What is the hybrid working pattern now? And what do you think the hybrid working pattern will be in the future, based upon the conversations you are having with senior leaders, Jules?
Yeah, I think, this one's such a, again,
I said that to you, didn't I?
It's so controversial, and I feel like I'm so controversial with how I answer this question. So I'm gonna caveat this, because I think there are certain circumstances that differ here, and that are different. So I think if you are a really experienced professional, and you are a carer, or you're a parent, or you've got a specific need, that means you need to have more flexibility, you need to have better hybrid working. I totally understand that, and I completely support that, and always have done, and always will continue to. I think what the problem we're seeing at the moment is there is a complete misalignment between what a hiring manager and what a senior leader in a business, a CEO, CFO, head of department, what they think, and what our younger generations are requesting. Yeah. And it's so hard for us, because we're in the middle. And I obviously want to support a candidate getting the flexibility that works for them. And they might need that. But also our job is to also hire somebody for a business. And when we're working with large organisations like we are, FTSE organisations, actually, you need to appreciate that there is a little bit of there's a request from the client, there's a request from the business, and there's a request from the candidate. And ultimately, it's the client that will always win in this scenario. So, for example, most organisations now, they are requesting 3 days a week in the office. For FTSE organisations, that is the requirement.
Yeah.
Candidates are still really looking for more remote. Not all candidates, I will hasten to add, but a lot of candidates are still looking for more flexibility. And it's not aligning. It's simply not aligning. And in my personal opinion, to make impact, to progress your career, you need to be exposed to senior leadership. And so my answer is quite different for somebody who's senior and for somebody who's junior. When you're junior in your career, when you're starting out in your career, when you're coming out of your first practice environment, or you're 4 or 5 years into your job and you're learning still, you are going to have to shadow and you're going to have to learn from more senior people. And that means you have to go into the office more, and you have to be more willing to do that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're still seeing such a conflict between those two.
It's a really interesting concept, because I've had a lot of conversations where, candidates aren't willing to go in twice a week, let's say, for example. And our industries are different, Jules, right? For yours, it seems quite consistent. Yeah. I think everyone knows us on the podcast in our 2 different industries, but if we've got any new listeners, or for those that don't know, Jules, like she said, works across the FTSE 100 or FTSE 250 in-house roles, whereas I work across your big 4, your top 10, and your smaller boutique consulting firms. Now, you've got a bit more consistency here, Jules.
Yeah.
I haven't. Which probably sometimes makes it a little bit difficult, because you do have your firms where there are people who are going in 5 days a week, and that firm has said you're in, and you do, and this is done right from partner level through to the juniors.
Fair.
And they do it. It's not just something they dictate. It's a culture in their business. They are young, they're ambitious, they are driven. Not that I'm saying other firms aren't by any means, right? But that is their precedence. It is take it or leave it. That's the attitude they've gone with, right? And then I've got other clients on the other side of the spectrum where it is, I do know the odd client or two who are still remote, but that's because their clients are more international. That makes sense. But, I'd say if I'm picking a happy medium, it is the 3-2, but we've got different messages either sides of all the firms. Therefore, you get a more skewed opinion or perception about what the balance is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's been really difficult for in our role, I think, because, we want to support everybody in their career choices, but our job is also to advise, and I would feel like I wasn't doing my job properly if I wasn't advising somebody whose motivations, whose drivers are to progress and to have a really amazing career, and career is everything to them. But if they're saying they want to be at home every day, I have the duty to say to them, look, that's going to make your career path a little bit more of a struggle.
Well, if you think about it from the perspective where, let's say, for example, you're in 5 days a week and I'm not at all. Who do you, and I have a strong view on this, so I am going to throw that out there, and other people might disagree, and absolutely that is fine, right? People will have differences of opinion, but I think when a business goes through change and adaptability, etc., if the person is in the office constantly and sees people and adds value, and let's say, for example, the situation does change, you're adding more value to that business more than I might be from a presence, from a culture perspective. Yeah. And everybody talks about culture. Everyone talks about how important that is, what a risk culture is. So personally, I'm finding it a bit hypocritical where something's really important to us, but people don't want to be in. And I know I will get differences of opinion for saying this, but I think there's a happy medium somewhere,
Yeah, agreed. As I said, I think there's a caveat for people who need it. I think the question I would always pose is to people who don't need that flexibility, but they just have a preference. Yeah. Well, you might have a preference. I would prefer to make a lot more money. However, I don't, you know? And I think that's where we push back a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Controversial, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. I feel like my opinion's definitely out there. But that's what we're here for, right? Today is to give our views and opinions.
Yeah,
And some people will align with what we're thinking or not. And that's perfectly okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tips for progression then. What tips would you give to candidates, or if a candidate wants to prosper in their role, what advice would you give to a candidate who is really ambitious, who really wants to progress?
Yeah, I saw a Steve Bartlett post on this a couple of days ago, and it was, you've got to choose. So you've got to choose to work hard. You've got to choose your attitude. You've got to choose your work ethic. You've got to choose to go above and beyond. I loved that. I think that was really, really, a great way of putting it, because if I think back to my own career and how I've progressed, it's because I chose to deliver a project that was outside of my remit.
Yeah.
It's because I chose to do a new initiative. It's because I chose to come into the office positive, not negative. It's because I chose to, make an effort with my boss, but also my peer group and juniors, So I think it's about choosing. And I would say, whenever I've spoken to heads of audit and they've told me about, what they look for in a candidate who they're going to progress, it is that putting your hand up, going above and beyond, just trying, it's that effort piece.
Yeah.
Because you might have good skill, but if you haven't got the will,
Yeah.
you won't get promoted.
Yeah, the skill or will is really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a dynamic. It's a theory that I definitely have talked about many times and definitely believe in. I mean, something.
We're about in practice.
Yeah. It's this. As in the industry that I.
Yeah, because that's like a different ball game, isn't it? That's totally different in professional services.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because professional services is always seen as a lot harder. Is that the wrong word? Harder? I think a bit more challenging. So you could have someone with a really high will, but actually to do exams, Jules, whilst you work, it's really tough to juggle all that. Then you've got the different clients, different sectors. It is tough. And then actually sometimes you've got people on the flip side of that. But I think, it's something that we have to actively think about is, yes, you might not have the will. So for example, there are times in my career where I'm not sure if I've had the will, but actually I've had the skill, and that's kind of, I focused on that. And then sometimes I've had the will, not had the skill, but been willing to put myself out of my comfort zone to learn that skill.
I love that. That's a really good
Does that
point.
make sense?
Yeah, it really makes sense.
Oh, good. I just made it up now.
You're not going to have skill and will at all times, all
equal.
the time.
They're not equal. They're not always up there, right? They will always be at different levels and at different roles and different experiences in your career. Something that I will say about this one is networking is so key, especially in my world, especially in professional services, but also maybe more of a personal journey to me. I think, Jules, you've seen me throughout my career. You've got more experience than I have. And I had a stumbling block of even putting my views and opinions out there on LinkedIn. That was a huge, scary thought of me, because it is scary to think, what if someone doesn't listen to my opinions or not agree with them? That disagreement was scary to me. But also networking.
Yeah.
There was a time in my career I didn't enjoy that. And I really had to push myself out of my comfort zone to be able to leverage that and really enjoy it. And that's what I would say to anyone is, if you do want to prosper in your role, push yourself out of your comfort zone, no matter what that is. It could be different things. It doesn't have to be networking, but just do it.
It could be mentorship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mentorship's a big one, probably a whole new topic in itself, but I think getting a mentor is a really powerful way. Not even just a mentor from your business, but a mentor outside of your business, somebody that you trust, somebody that can give you some top tips. It's a really great way of doing it. Is it client turn?
It is client turn. Let's move on swiftly to the client side. So, Jules, we're going to flip it now, aren't we? So
yeah,
this side is your side.
Yeah, I'm going to read off the sheet. I wish I had my glasses on. So this is a hiring manager, for example, might have asked us this question. Should I ask a candidate their salary expectations in the interview?
Got two different answers here. And I also have just a bit more understanding in terms of where they are at in the process. So, for example, hiring manager, if it's direct, then yes, ask.
Sorry, when we say direct, we mean let's imagine that there is not an agency involved. So let's imagine that this is a head of department hiring somebody and they're not using an agency, they're just using their direct process. They might be using their HR team. They might be just doing it themselves on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a process where candidates come straight to you, right?
Yeah.
And I would say yes, because then you understand where are their expectations in line with what you're willing to pay? Does that meet your budget, et cetera, et cetera? If it's through an agency, I'm going to say no, because your agency or your firm that has presented that candidate should tell you transparently right from the get-go what the candidate's expectations are, notice period, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say if it's through an agency, especially like ours, don't ask. You should trust the agency you are working with to present the right salary with the right market value of that candidate.
Yeah, I totally agree with this, because I have seen in the past situations, and probably more actually you, Sheens, where a candidate has panicked in that situation.
Yeah.
They felt really awkward. Let's be honest, we're working with people who just might not want to talk about money. We don't mind talking about that stuff. We've learned how to do it. Yeah, it's our job.
Yeah.
But for these individuals, it's not their job. It's really awkward. They're already quite anxious. A candidate is already quite stressed. To be asked that question in an interview, they can panic. And I have seen situations where that candidate, unfortunately, often tends to be a female, undersells themselves.
I was just about to say this.
Yeah, they undersell how much they are worth. And then they get upset afterwards because they worry that they've shot themselves in the foot. They kind of have. And so I think as a hiring manager, it's not very fair.
No.
I think they should, in this situation, if an agency is representing, leave that discussion for them.
And this goes back to another point, just while we're on this topic, Jules, is use an agency you trust. Because if you trust that person, that sometimes, the budget has been X and I've put it in $5,000 lower. Why? Because that is the candidate's market value.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And there's absolutely been situations where a candidate's been put on the spot, been asked the salary, and then they've stated $5,000 lower. And then the clients come back to me and said, hold on, you've said this, they've said that, you're asking for more. Are you trying to do me out of money? And no, absolutely not. That's not how this works. No. And yeah, I think I'll stop there, just because we can talk about that all day.
Yeah, we have that situation happen quite a lot. Okay, so how do I ensure, this is again a hiring manager, how do I ensure a candidate has a good, smooth interview process? How do I create a really smooth interview process?
Right, so hiring manager head on is firstly have to look. We've been there, Jules. We have done our day job. We do these podcasts, which is all fun and we love it. But to hire and to set out spaces and times in your diary for interviewing, it does take time. Reviewing CVs take time. Doing the interviews itself take time. So first thing I'm going to say is, one, you need to have a commitment to the process. Yeah. Because I think people sometimes underestimate just how much time, but also sometimes it just is one person out the whole business that person is responsible. You need to decide who are the key stakeholders in this process. Yeah. Who is a part of what stage when? What timelines am I going to be working with? How quick should I provide an interview, feedback to the candidate? Because, sometimes there have been interviews with our candidates, or I've heard from candidates that we've potentially just spoken to and not even helped, where they're waiting 2 weeks for feedback or something like that. And that just, you want your organization to come up, have a very good brand, have a very slick interview process. And I know sometimes things don't move fast, and that's okay. And there's certain conversations that need to happen in order to move forward. Or someone might be on annual leave. But at the end of the day, you do need to plan for this. And if you're on annual leave, who is covering? Don't recruit. Or don't recruit, firstly.
Or make sure... Don't recruit.
Physically not there. Or assign somebody else who can do that for you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's just really, really thinking ahead. And sometimes I just don't think, unless you've done that over again and again and you've worked with, again, a really good agency, then yes, you know the process by then. But I think there's just a challenge sometimes, isn't there? Especially if you're a new hiring manager.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't have the resources. I mean, earlier I put on my LinkedIn, there's 55% out of a study that was done on Indeed, where they asked 1,000 people, professionals, so candidates and professionals, hiring managers, around the process. 55% of candidates did not hear back. And then they were talking about what mental health or what stress that plays on them. Don't forget, we talked about unforeseen circumstances. You know, they might be immediately available, financial pressures. You know, you just don't know what they're going through. So actually have a seamless process. And if you need support, work with one agency and they can take all that pressure off you.
Yeah, I was going to say, my point on this is the model that you use. So just use one agency, and it does not have to be us. I've said this so many times, like, I'm not even just saying it has to be me. I'd love it if it was, of course, but it doesn't have to be me. But just use one, because it becomes such a mess when you use multiple agencies, right? So first of all, in the briefing call, when you brief multiple people at the same time, nobody has the freedom, nobody has the sort of the will to challenge or be honest with the client, because they're in a room with their competitors. They're not going to challenge the client in that meeting. So already you've started off the process with there being potentially fundamental issues. The salary could be wrong. The location could be wrong. The expectations of the candidate could be completely bonkers. Nobody is going to say that in that briefing call when there's multiple agencies on that call.
Well, unless you're me, and and hiring managers might be listening to this.
Yeah, but you don't.
She did.
But you sometimes don't want to give away your things.
You
to
don't
another
either.
agency.
So
Yeah. So what I would say that creates an issue right from the start, and then the issues just keep going and they keep going and they keep going, because the most important meeting, the most important part of a recruitment process is that briefing call. And the action that takes place right after that briefing call. Yeah. Because if you've then got multiple agencies calling the best candidate on the market, that candidate could be the perfect candidate. They could join you, hypothetically, but you've now just really bloody annoyed them because they've heard about your business 4 times in one day, differing opinions from the differing recruitment agencies, because we've all got different opinions with different people.
Yeah.
You've heard different information, different nuances. Quite frankly, at this point, you think they're a bit desperate and you're a bit bored and fed up of them. And so it loses the sparkle. That company loses its sparkle. It loses its intrigue and its interest. So you've just basically messed up. On the first day, you've messed up because the briefing call hasn't been good enough, hasn't been challenged enough. The agencies haven't been honest enough with you. And then you've got this great candidate who's just been really annoyed because they've had 4 calls from every single person in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've had direct feedback from candidates who have said, they have literally said, you are the 5th person to contact me about this same role. They sound desperate. Yeah. And you want your branding to come off as premium. And I have had genuine conversations where I'm saying, don't use me. If you don't, sometimes it's got to click as well between you and the recruiter that you're giving that role to. And the hiring manager, you need to work together really, really well. It's in partnership, isn't it? Yeah. And sometimes I have said, look, don't use me. Yeah. If you don't think I'm the right person, don't use me, and that's absolutely fine, but just use one. And also, it just goes back to, Jules, we've said this, haven't we? I mean, I got married last year. Do you use 2-3 wedding planners? No, you do not. You use one wedding planner. Imagine your wedding day. It would be an absolute mess. Same concept with your recruitment process, right?
Well, same with every other job in the world. You don't use 2 lawyers. You don't use 2 plumbers. You don't use 2 of anything, really, and pitch them up against each other. If you want something done well and if you want something done slick, you get 2 businesses to pitch against each other, and then you pick one.
Right, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, or I'm just going to chuck out a pushback that I think people could be thinking about. So I am going to address it on the spot. A hiring manager would think, and I want to see what you say to this, right? A hiring manager would think, hold on, if I'm talking to multiple agencies, surely they're covering the market more, right? Logic, get it? What's the flaw in that logic, in your opinion?
Yeah, they're covering the active market. So when you get multiple agencies all working on the same role, they're only going to commit 25% of their time, let's say, right? So they're going to do the quickest, easiest tasks. The quickest, easiest tasks is they run at the active market. They call all the candidates that they know are right now looking for a job and who are active. They might then do a LinkedIn search, a little bit of a LinkedIn search, but they'll probably only go through the first 3 pages of candidates. Then they'll get bored. Another project will come in that's exclusive or a higher fee.
Yeah.
And they will turn their attention straight away across to that other project.
It's prioritization, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is just commercial.
Yeah, it's commercial.
Yep.
The difference, if it's exclusive, you've got this whole massive weight of pressure on your shoulders because you've got to deliver this project for this client. Yeah. So yes, you'll go after the active database. Then you'll do a LinkedIn search, but you'll do a LinkedIn search and go through all of the pages. Then you'll also call all the candidates that you know in your market and ask for referrals. You also might go onto websites and find people on websites. There's a whole host of different things that you would do in an exclusive search. You would try your damned hardest to fill that role.
It's because you've got the time. You've got the time. Because you're not having a rat race against other people.
Yeah.
And also you are accessing the more passive candidate market, which is actually who you want to access. They're the good ones. The good ones are the ones that are not looking.
Yeah. The word headhunter, which everyone talks about, headhunter, that's from an exclusive process. We headhunt when it's exclusive. We headhunt when it's retained.
Yeah.
Nobody headhunts when it's against 4 other agencies.
No. You're just going to go to who you know, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fair.
Sorry, hang on. Let me just pull my piece of paper out. How can you limit withdrawals or candidates backing out of jobs, backing out of offers? How do you limit that from happening? Okay, there's a couple of different nuances here. So how can you maybe limit them from backing out of withdrawing from a process?
So what could I do from a hiring manager perspective, right?
Yeah.
So look, if it was me, just because I know what a good process looks like, is firstly, if you are using an agency, they will do it all for you. And I still say, even with that, you need to keep in touch directly or get them embedded with the team. So you want to make sure, when they sign that contract, be personable. Send them an email, invite them to a social, get them sort of feeling like they're a part of that team already. Because I have had this where candidates have accepted, they've signed the contract, and nobody's even kept in touch, apart from me as the agency, which is my job. That's fine. That's what you're paying me for. But nobody from the team has actually kept in touch with that candidate up until their start date. And actually, where are they going? Where's the laptop going? I'm trying to reflect back on COVID times where laptops were being sent home. They didn't even know when it was coming home. They didn't know, do they actually, and this is when things got lifted, so it was a bit more grayer. Do they go to the office that day? Do they not go to the office that day? Who do they ask for? It's just little logistics. So I would say from a hiring manager perspective, really be in touch with that person. Make it personable. This person is going to be in your team. Yeah. Surely you've just recruited an asset.
Yeah.
So look after them.
Take them for a drink.
Yeah, take them for a drink. Take them out for lunch.
Yeah.
It's little things that matter the most. And this all goes back to, again, culture. What culture are you creating? Why did you want that person on board? Why did you say yes to that person above anyone else you might have saw? So your process or your impact on that person starts soon as you make that offer.
Yeah.
Yes, your agency will deliver the offer. However, like I said earlier, you could be they could have applied direct. That's on you. That starts now.
Yeah, agreed. People feel part of your business the minute they say yes, not the minute they walk through the door.
No,
right?
Not. Yeah.
Limiting withdrawals from process. So this does obviously happen a lot. Candidates go into a process and then they then pull out of a process. you can limit that through just speed. So
Absolutely.
the amount of withdrawals that we get from candidates because they get fed up with how slow the process is, and they also don't feel very engaged again by the hiring manager.
Yeah.
In every single interview that you do, you need to have some element of human. So yes, you can do a competency-based interview that's challenging, absolutely. But have maybe good cop, bad cop. Have one person who's more challenging. Have one person who's more wraparound, empathetic, kind, friendly. We do that. Me and my colleague Chris. So Chris is quite bad cop in our interviews. I will never then be bad cop because
it doesn't work.
Also have to think about engaging the candidate. You need to make sure the candidate are enjoying the interview process. So I think that's where a lot of clients get this wrong. They go too far down the track of need to be really strict with my questions and be really robotic and can't interact with them and engage with them because of ED&I. And that's a bit of a problem, actually.
Yeah.
And you still need to be a human being and still need to be friendly and kind and ask them how their day's been, because you need to remember here it's a two-way interview process.
Yeah.
Candidates are still in the driving seat. It's a candidate-led market for all of us. And you are going to get withdrawals if you're not engaging the people who are interviewing with you.
Yeah, two things here. One, it does affect their confidence, especially if it does, because they start to question like, oh, do they really want me?
Yeah.
Do they want me? Yeah. Oh, actually, someone's paying me a bit more interest.
We're all
and
quite
they seem a bit more
selfish.
committed to the process. Imagine it's dating. You want someone that's committed.
But it's like dating. This is the thing. You're not going to go on a second date with somebody who's a bit of a meanie. I'm going to swear, but I'm not going to swear. You wouldn't go on the second date. You'd bin it off.
But I will shout out to someone, and I think when he hears this, he will know I'm talking about him because he is my client, or he's moved on to different avenues. But I will shout him out because I do feel like I need to sympathise. This hiring manager did everything right. I could not fault this person. Is great, good connection of mine. He invited that person to lunches, drinks, embedded them with the team, kept in touch with. From a process perspective, Jules did everything that person needed to do as a hiring manager to get that person on board. And that person still didn't take that role. So sometimes you don't always win, but do the best you absolutely can when you're hiring that person.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about this, thinking, actually, I can improve my processes or the processes aren't right, then hopefully this is a helpful conversation.
Yeah, agreed. And on that note, I think we should probably wrap up because I hope we've given some really good insight there and given some really good tips and hints. We're now going to go for a wine. So
yeah, because we need a wine. So we're going to leave you, love you and leave you.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a drink.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.